My name is Esteve Corbera. I worked at the Institute of Environmental Science and Technology at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and I'm also a research associate at the School of International Development at the University of East Anglia in Norwich. So the aim of the COCOA project was to investigate to which extent REDD was fueling or it was ameliorating conflicts around natural resource management in 3 countries, in Mexico, in Nepal, and in Vietnam. Well, they are related because you cannot understand one without the other. No? The way we understand cooperation in the project is to which extent actors involved in REDD work together to realize REDD in an effective way, and they try to reduce the existing conflicts, if any, in the management of forests and in the management of land use resources. What we find in the project then is that you find instances of cooperation in trying to resolve conflicts, and you also find instances of conflicts where cooperation cannot occur because some actors involved in REDD have very contrasting objectives and very contrasting priorities around forest resource use. We chose these 3 countries because they present very different realities when it comes to the management of forests, and not only in terms of the legal frameworks, but also then the social and cultural context in which communities are immersed and they are part of. So we have Mexico, which is one of the earliest movers into REDD. It's in Latin America. It has a very long-standing land tenure system that has devolved rights to farmers and indigenous communities for the past, since the early 20th century, in fact. Most communities have their own rights over land and forests, and this makes it a very interesting case to study when it comes to REDD, because as you know, REDD involves trying to conserve and to manage more sustainably the forests. The other 2 cases are very different. We do have quite an important level of secure tenure in Nepal, where communities have rights over the forest as well, and they are organized around community forestry groups. And then we have Vietnam, where forests and lands are owned ultimately by the state, and there are many more conflicts around who should access these forests, for which purpose, and so on. And then also in terms of the legal framework that is supporting REDD, the 3 countries have also lots of differences, with Mexico having a strategy that has been relatively counting with a lot of participation from civil society actors, Nepal and Vietnam as well, but to a lower extent. And we would argue as well that the commitment of the countries towards REDD somewhat diverges as well. Well, in order to identify and reach the most relevant actors involved in REDD in each country, what we did is to basically go back to formal policy to analyze formal policy documents that were being part of the country's national REDD strategy, and we basically saw which were the main actors participating in the development of those strategies. And after that, once we contacted those actors, we also asked them who were the actors who haven't been participating in the development of the strategies and why they have not been present and how we could contact them. So in this way, we sort of tried to amplify our sample of key actors to be interviewed, not only looking at those who participate, but also looking and interviewing those who have not been involved and why that has been the case. One of the most important challenges we have faced as a project in terms of involving national actors, it's been precisely to capture the attention of those who have not participated in the REDD national strategy development, either because they didn't really have an interest in participating for whatever reason, or because it was too costly for them to get involved in the national discussions. And as a result, they thought that they didn't have anything to say about it, although they might have a lot of interesting things to say. So it was very difficult to contact them and talk to them. And therefore, as a result, I mean, we haven't been able to capture all the relevant actors in our research. I would say just an important share of them, but not all of them. Among those, what I would like to highlight is that a lesson across the three countries is that the private sector, and when I say the private sector here, I have a sort of a holistic perspective on the private sector. Any actor from private companies that have a stake on land use change or who affect land use change in one way or another. So the tourist development sector, infrastructure development sector, agribusinesses, and so on. We have been quite unsuccessful in bringing them to our research, attracting them to our activities. And this is a common lesson across the countries, which reveals, in a way, it's a finding. I mean, it reveals that one of the main challenges of REDD in the coming years is how to make these actors participate more centrally in the implementation of REDD strategies in developing countries. In terms of participation that we were talking about before, one of the main challenges that governments in these countries face is to involve those actors who are indeed willing to participate, but because of very high costs of attending meetings in the capital of the countries, they don't. And therefore, in this sense, I mean, one of the lessons that are relevant for policymakers from our project is that more public budget needs to be dedicated to reach subnational levels of governance, and especially, the capitals of different regions where forests are a relevant resource, and try to bring the organizations and the relevant individuals of those regions around the table. So in terms of participation, that's an important lesson. The second lesson in terms of early implementation activities is that projects need to be much more sensitive to the social and cultural context where they are implemented. And by social and cultural context, it's again a very broad interpretation, and I'm also referring to questions of tenure, questions of property rights, who own the forest. Projects need to go beyond the legal circumstances in which people live, and also look at more casual relations of access to the forest. Who are the actors that have a stake in the forest and who might be invisible to you as a project implementer because they don't figure on the national legislation, but in the local context they're very important in actually managing the forest and in understanding why some resources are being used and why they are not. So across the three countries, again, REDD activities need to be more sensitive to these nitty-gritty details of the local context. And related to this is that we also found in the three countries that ethnic minorities, in the case of Vietnam, the sort of lower castes in the case of Nepal, and also those who don't have formal property rights in Mexico, need to be better incorporated into project activities and need to benefit much more from projects than they have done so far.